And welcome, everybody.
We are live. Welcome to the 4.0 Solutions weekly live Q&A, or as we like to call it now, the 4.0 Solutions podcast
Podcast.
for Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. So what's up, Zach?
Dude, the podcast is doing really good, by the way. A lot of people are downloading that last episode.
Mm-hmm. Some interesting metrics. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of integrators who watch our content and who are definitely not what I would say true believers of our philosophies. But it's even, there are a lot of people who work at OEMs who watch our content. Rockwell is definitely one of the biggest ones. If you look at people, I think most people would be very, very surprised at the type of information you get in your digital media metrics. Like if you know what countries, what ages, where people work, what their jobs are, like that you get, using the correct analytics platforms. So, yes, the podcast has been doing really, really, really well. So what have you been up to, man? Let's do 120 seconds of fellowship.
Yeah.
While I drink my protein shake.
Just got back this weekend actually from the Midwest, and we had a successful DTMA week on site. And
what was your big takeaway? That was your first time being on site for a digital transformation maturity assessment. This was in
it was worth it. It was worth it.
Agriculture.
Yeah,
agriculture, right?
I mean, they paid a premium to have us all be out there. I mean, it's flying and everything, especially compared to remotely. It's a lot more expensive, but it was worth it. I mean, this is like their enterprise strategy. I mean, actually, technically, I was talking with Cheryl. You could probably figure out who this company is because we posted on your LinkedIn, and the CEO executive went and commented on your LinkedIn post saying, hey, great to get started, Alan, Zach, Travis, like, tag this company. We're ready to get started on our digital transformation journey. So like it's technically out there, public information, even though we do have like NDAs and stuff. We can't talk about their digital strategy, but you could figure out who we are working for. I mean, if you just threw a dart at the wall of like list of Fortune 500 companies, you'd probably land on a company that we work with. But
yeah,
we're wanting to get more case studies. We're wanting to get like on site more. So I think my takeaway was being on site was definitely worth it for a DTMA, like at an enterprise strategy level.
What was your big takeaway? So when because this is the first time you've been on site for DTMA, what was because you've sat in on DTMAs that we've done
Problems
remotely.
that they're facing are all the same. The problems that they're facing are all the same. Having to go to 3, 4, 5 different systems to get information. In this particular client, their customer service representatives, I'm surprised that these ladies haven't quit, to be honest. I'm like, are you sure you're going to be here for another 18 months? Like, do you have 18 months left in you? Because we're going to need you, guys and gals, to be part of this initiative because you're the only ones who know how anything works around here.
Right,
Like
level of
they don't
frustration
really
high.
manufacture stuff. They sort of do kind of contract manufacturing. So they're working with international shipping, vendors in China, customer service. Like they're the front line. They're making sure like, hey, did this get ordered? Hey, you need a replacement part. What part was that even? Like they're really a mess right now, but it all ties back down to that same problem, which is not having a single source of truth for all data information, one single pane of glass for engineering, sales, marketing, customer service, all to interface through that would solve literally all their problems. So it was just interesting to be able to see in this unique case and learn the intricacies of this particular business and how we're going to tackle those problems and what are the risks and what is the right architecture. And one of the other things is like this particular DTMA team, I mean, they are stacked. Like this is one of the nastiest digital transformation teams I've ever seen.
It's funny you say that.
Well-rounded. Like they've got a background from like this sales, and one guy did an ERP implementation, so he's like the in-house ERP guru. And then they've got a great leader who identified even a Gen Z talent who she was literally actively looking for another job, identified her as a talent, brought her onto the DT team, and now she's going to be able to affect change in the organization rather than quitting.
Yeah, it's funny. I wasn't part of the. We weren't even going to talk about this in this Q&A, and I'm going to go over what our agenda is for today. But this is actually a really good subject, so I think we'll stick with it here for a couple more minutes. But let me say, I had the debrief with. So real quick background. We just completed. Well, they're actually completing it this week. But last week, we had a team of 3 people on site doing a digital transformation maturity assessment in the Midwest with an agricultural company. And I wasn't part of it at all, other than a very initial discussion. Alan Ramsey is the one who led the whole engagement, did a phenomenal job. And I had the debrief last night. So it was basically, they were just going through what they learned and some key elements. And one of the things that really stood out, Alan actually sent me an email, or I don't remember if he wrote it in IM or email, but he basically said, we like to use the term, we try to quantify whether or not an organization has the spring loaded for digital transformation. So what does that mean? This is probably a really important nugget of knowledge. When you're first engaging with a organization, one of the things you want to ascertain in the early phases of digital transformation, when you're quantifying the business, you're analyzing the business, right? And when you do that, what you're trying to ascertain is the spring loaded? Like, are they prepared ready to just take off like a rocket on this journey? And there's some, and if you guys are in mastermind or mentorship, you see sort of our baseline pillars on how we quantify whether or not an organization, the spring is loaded. We don't use that term a lot publicly, but internally we use that term all the time. And Alan sent me the message saying the spring is loaded here. And so when we were in the debrief yesterday, I asked him the question, why is the spring loaded? And it starts with the top. Okay. So the chief executive officer there is a no nonsense guy. He's a transformative, disruptive leader, period. Okay. To the point where it's, this is going to happen. You're going to be part of the solution or you won't be here. That's not normal. Okay. And you don't have to work. Most CEOs are vapid Manchurian candidates. There's no personality whatsoever. They're never disruptive to their people. They want it, they're just nothing but a talking head. The vast majority of CEOs that I deal with. That this organization has a transformative, disruptive leader in charge. Number two,
kind of reminds me of you, actually, a little bit.
Thank you. But the other thing that stood out when Alan was kind of listing everything off is this digital transformation team that they've put together, that he's put together, is one of the best we've come across without our intervention. So part of our expertise is helping build these teams. And one of the members on that team is in our mastermind already. So I suspect, I haven't asked him, but I suspect he has played a huge role in putting this team together, like taking what he's learned in mastermind and consulting with the CEO to help put this team together. But Alan said, these guys have a phenomenal digital transformation team. And so to the point where I'm not part of this engagement, but I asked Alan, I said, I'd like for you to set up a meeting so that I can meet with this digital transformation team, because a huge part of what we do is we help build that team. But with this client specifically, we're not going to have to do that. That team's already in place. And let me just say this. We do this so much. We do these DTMAs so much that when you come across an organization, we have another one that's also in the Midwest, based in Illinois, where they had, it was obvious when we went on site, it was obvious who the transformative leaders were and who the people should be on this team. That doesn't happen a lot. I mean, it really doesn't happen a lot where the spring is loaded. They've got the transformative, disruptive leadership. They've got the complete team. And I'm going to go over a use case today that was from 2016, where I'm going to talk about what we achieved in just 1 year with this client. Okay. And it's the difference between what you can achieve with a client where the spring is loaded and what you achieve with a client where you have to first load the spring. So if you have to load the spring, that means you have to win people over early on in this initiative. But if the organization is already won over, and when I mean won over, I mean there are 9 transformative leaders for every 1 caveman, right? That's spring loaded. What you can achieve in just a short amount of time is mind boggling. Okay. Um, any questions in the chat real quick? Before I go through the
Yeah,
agenda, what we're going to
my
cover.
question is, I don't really all the meetings went really well too. Like not a single one was really difficult.
That's because the
Uh,
spring's loaded.
yeah.
You're not having to convince anyone, right?
Even the executive one, I was kind of nervous for a little bit, but it went really well. Like there was great engagement. Like all of them had great answers, and by the end of the process, they're like, wow, even the DT team was like, just going through this process alone, we learned so much about our organization just going through this. Like I've written so many things down, so many things we want to fix. Like, it's a great exercise and it's helpful to have a consultant to be there to lead it, right? Because I recommend going through this on your own if you can do that, but having the consultant there is also key.
That's good. And for those of you who are not watching live, so if you're watching this later, or you're listening to it just over the podcast. Zach is actually on the road this week. He's
Yeah.
in Phoenix, so he doesn't have his mic set up or anything. So his audio should sound a little different. There's nothing wrong with your podcast app or anything. So agenda for today, a couple things we're going to go over. So just some 4.0 solutions news and updates for those of you who are in the Mastermind Accelerator. So if you guys are going through that 12-week accelerator program, step 9 is tomorrow. So the 9th week is tomorrow. And you guys should have gone through the introduction to digital supply chain. We're going to be doing module 9 tomorrow. Zach will be leading that session. This is a really, really important topic. So this is if you remember how digital transformation happens for organizations, happens in 2 huge steps. Step 1, right, is really becoming a smart business. Step 2, the second big step is plugging into a digital supply chain, getting connected to other smart businesses. The session tomorrow that Zach's going to go through is all about the introduction to the digital supply chain. There's a lot of content there for him to get through. Okay. We got a couple of general topics that we're going to go over, and then we're going to get into our use case, where we're going to talk about a use case from 2016, 2017, with a discrete additive manufacturer, and what was achieved and how much it costs to achieve it. I think is going to blow some people's minds. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, did get one question that came in from Sanjiv. You want to hit it now or?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. It's so Sanjiv said data from disparate systems. When you bring them together via a unified namespace, the persistence of this unified data, would you do that in a relational system for modeling, for consumption and visualization? That depends on the mechanisms through which the consumer nodes consume data. So persistence can be achieved and is achieved in MQTT through quality of service and retention flags. So if I'm using MQTT, for example, we're not using AMQP, which also they do have QOS and retain flags. Actually, any broker technology is going to use quality of service. That is when a client is publishing something into the ecosystem. So if I'm a PLC and I'm going to publish a tag update into an MQTT topic, I'm going to define my quality of service as either I'm not going to define it, or I'm going to define it as 0, 1, or 2. And whether I define it as 0, 1, or 2 is going to say how important that message is that it gets to the people who might subscribe to it. So it's how many times you would notify a consumer, someone who's subscribed to that information. How many times, is it just one time or at least one time? Or you're going to keep trying to notify them. And then retention is a flag the MQTT client sends to the broker to say, retain this in the broker. So let's say I've got a topic that is IntelliC integration, Dallas, Texas, temperature, okay, 87 degrees right now. When I publish that temperature 87 degrees right now, I can put my retention flag high. If I put the retention flag high, it means that anyone who subscribes to temperature after the message was sent is going to get the last value. That's what retention means. If I don't retain it, then the person who subscribes to temperature is not going to get it until the next change happens. Okay. So number one, to answer Sanjiv's question, it is a function of how the consumer is going to consume the data. If you consume directly from the broker, and I'm not looking for any historical, that is, I'm looking for time series, which I have to get from a historical node, or I have to publish back in a data set into the namespace, then for the most part, you're not going to have to store, you're not going to have to do retention in a relational database. However, there are some use cases where an architect may come to the conclusion, for this specific use case, we're going to want to do retention in a transaction group or something like that. Good question. Really good question. Jeff Rankinen, the class is connecting their Ignition installs to a Hive MQTT broker today. Awesome job, Jeff. Hey, are you guys using Ignition Maker Edition, or did you guys download the regular Ignition installation? When you get a chance, if you want to answer that. A couple of updates before we get into the use case. So if you guys haven't had a chance to watch, there's a video that we did in the Industry 4.0 talks. I think it's number 4. Zach, is that right? Is it Industry 4?
We've only published up to number 3, and the most recent one was, it starts with digital strategy.
Right. So it starts with a digital strategy. If you haven't watched that video, that's a good one to watch. It's also a good video I get a lot of questions about, hey, do you have any content I can share with my boss, or I can share with executive leadership? That would be a good video. We have a new one that's coming out that it's not going to be public. It's going to be for the mastermind group, and it's going to be a resource for the under the leadership session. So when we did leadership, which I think was that's module 8 in mastermind, I shot a video a couple of weeks ago that was, what is our biggest regret? So what project was our biggest regret? And what was the lesson we learned from that? One of the things I've talked about is we really haven't had many fails. When you look at the total number of, we have thousands of inquiries. We have 230 something active accounts, right? And thousands of projects from those active accounts. We really only have 3 or 4. We've only fired a client 3 times, and we've only had one project we regretted. And I actually shot a video about that project. And how we handled it. How did we know that we probably shouldn't have done it to begin with, and why didn't we listen to our gut? And so that'll be a valuable video, I think, for the mastermind folks.
So that is going out only to mastermind.
I think Cheryl will make the final decision. So if you guys want to,
I was wanting to publish it for everyone, and Cheryl's like, "Nah, that's too valuable. That needs to be for mastermind." So
I don't think she meant it. I don't think she meant it as value. What she meant is that the appropriate place to message it is in that specific leadership training.
I think so.
She's saying that the people who are going to benefit the most from that content are the people who go through that leadership module. That's what she's saying, and add that video as sort of a value add to that leadership module. But anyway,
welcome, Josh. Good to see you here, man. Joshua.
Thanks, Josh Daniel. Welcome. Mark Jackson, how do you win over and get older generation and senior management to buy into invest in a UNS Industry 4.0 ready solution? Good question, Mark Jackson. The answer is you don't try to win them over with words. Okay, so one of the things we talk about we talked about this in the leadership session, the accelerator last week. Don't fight the theoretical battles, win the results war. Okay. So generally what you want to identify is the 3 types of people in an organization. There are many more, but there are 3 key ones you want to identify. So number 1, you want to identify the caveman. So that's the citizen against virtually everything.
Or cave person.
No, caveman. So caveman or cave woman.
Or cave non-binary.
So the citizen against virtually everything. Okay. That is the person who always comes up with the 10 reasons why something's going to fail. Okay. It's the 10, you want to identify that personality. You stay away from them altogether in the beginning. You don't have anything to do with them. You don't have them part of your digital transformation initiative. You don't try to convince them of anything. The only thing you want to get from the cave person, caveman, cave woman, is a list of their problems. So you want to ask them for a problem they've been trying to solve for a week, a month, a year, whatever. And then you want to solve it using digital transformation. Okay. Number two, you're looking for the person who's paralysis by analysis. That is the person in the middle, right? That is the person who's going to go one way or the other as long as someone pulls them. Okay. And that's the vast majority of the people in your organization. That's going to be 60% of the people. And then what you're looking for then is the transformative and disruptive leaders. So what you do is you build a team out of the transformative and disruptive leaders. You solve the problems the cavemen give you, and you win over the people in the middle. Okay. You don't try to fight theoretical battles. Okay. What you do is you win results wars. And so the best way in an organization where the spring is not loaded, what I talked about earlier, in an organization where the spring is not loaded, all you really need is sponsorship and enablement from non-believers, and then you win them over with your results. Great question. Since the topic today is use cases, do you have a use case for a conventional power plant? Have you used IEC 61850 common in power sector? Yes. Dennis,
They use
let's
a
see.
lot of DNP3, right?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons DNP3 was created, was for highly regulated power industry. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you, man. Dennis, let me see if I can't add that to one of our 5 use cases. I've already picked out the 5 use cases, but maybe I can swap out one of the last ones for that use case. All right. If you guys have any more questions, Michael Dowdell, exactly right. Proof of concepts and pilots are the best way to convince, using the same approach, right? Do your POC, do your pilots with true believers, and then target the problems of the caveman, and then win over the people in the middle. General topics I want to go over. So interesting thing. We've been talking more and more about building automation, and this TV show reached out to us, a national TV show. It's actually shown internationally. It's shown on, on a major network here in the United States, and then it's shown on a major network in Europe as well. And they reached out to, like, hey, we want to come to Dallas and interview you for this show. And so we had the meeting with their executive producer last week to decide whether or not this is something we're interested in, and whether or not I'm right for them to interview. And the EP and he was asking me some questions about technology, and he wanted to understand kind of what do we do. And when I told him we focused really on industry, he asked, can you explain to me where the convergence of industry and the commercial and residential come together? And I said, well, that's a really great question. So let's focus on commercial building automation specifically. I get this question a lot. Like, right now, if you're an engineering firm, or you are, if you're a service provider for engineering services or automation services, you're going to specialize in really one of two areas. You're going to specialize in industry, or you're going to specialize in commercial building automation. Commercial building automation is going to be things like security, elevators, HVAC, right? But industry is going to be essentially anything that organization comes up with to turn raw materials or WIP into finished goods that they sell to somebody in the supply chain. When I told them about how commercial building is going to change with Industry 4.0, it's really this. I'm an engineering firm, okay? And we provide cloud-based services to our clients. In fact, we have a big server rack over here. We use some cloud-based stuff through AWS and Vulture, and then we have our own physical bare metal over here on the other side of the studio. Right now, I have no access to any climate information for my entire building, or external climate information. That is relative humidity outside, current temperature outside. And I have to put the sensors in. Myself and Matt and Michael and the other guys who work here, and guys and gals who work here, we have to put in the telemetry we need in order to understand the environment of the building, so that we can accurately control the temperature for our data center in a way that is most efficient in terms of energy consumption. However, if I am a commercial building, if I'm a commercial builder, I'm a real estate developer, and I build this building, the Industry 4.0 real estate developer provides all that telemetry to their tenants. Okay. Not only do they provide the telemetry, they provide access to those values. Okay. And when I told him that, when I told this executive producer that, and I said, the mechanism that real estate developer is going to use to install those sensors and make them available to all the tenants in the building is the exact same technology and architecture we use in industry. There's no difference between the two. Go ahead, Zach.
You're saying for commercial buildings, or?
Sure, absolutely.
Interesting.
Hey, turn your thing off. That I was listening to the podcast last week, and I could tell you right now, when that goes off, it hurts real bad. When you have headphones on, it hurts. It pierces your ears.
My bad.
Let's do I'm going to go to Josh Daniels' question here in a second. So anyway, the point is that it was striking to me how this executive producer, who is an engineer and who deals with engineering and architectural professionals all the time, hadn't drawn the line between current technology and potential for the vertical that he produces shows for to begin with. Number two, Elon Musk and Twitter. So I'm responding to this because I got a bunch of questions about Elon Musk and Twitter. I find it very interesting that Elon didn't just do a, hey, I have fuck you money, and Twitter has been suppressing speech and this is dangerous, and I'm going to go ahead and use my fuck you money to essentially do a hostile takeover. That's basically what he's done, right? And he'll probably continue to do a hostile takeover. I love what he's doing.
Though? Is it hostile?
Yeah, it's literally hostile. It's called a passive hostile takeover, right? It's a passive takeover. He just got announced that he's going to be on the board of directors because he's the largest single shareholder now. It was funny. I saw who's the CEO of Twitter. I can't remember, the Indian guy who took over for Dorsey. Pavran or Pravag.
So what actually happened for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah. So what happened was Elon Musk spent $3 billion and he bought 9.2% of Twitter.
Why would he do that?
Well, because what's been happening is Twitter's been suppressing speech. We talk about this all the time. Transparency is one of our core values. And we were talking to our team about this. And the reason I bring this up is, the Elon Musk Twitter thing is an illustration of his transformative and disruptive leadership. That's what this is. Okay. As an organization, transparency is one of our core values. And a couple of my engineers brought this up in Microsoft Teams last night and was saying, hey, what do you guys think of this? And I said, this is Elon Musk enforcing, he's basically spending his money on a company who is essentially the town square. It's basically the digital town square. It's where human beings share information and ideas. And he's using his money because he disagrees with the way that Twitter is handling the free exchange of ideas on their platform.
Is Twitter still trying to deny that that's what they do, or is it?
100%. In fact, the current CEO said only the smart people should decide what's,
like Babylon Bee got pulled from Twitter, and Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, the current CEO of Twitter has said, listen, the smart people are the only ones who should have a voice. That's his opinion. His position is
everyone should have a voice. That's
no. That is not their position. That is not his position. His position is not that all people should have a voice. His position is only the smart people should have the voice, and that we and the elites should take care of, right? That's his position. So, and I don't want to get into a political thing. I don't care about that part of it. What I care about is this, is the illustration of transformative and disruptive leadership, right? And that's an extension of values. Obviously, Elon Musk cares about the free exchange of ideas. Okay, that's important to him, and it's also important to me. And so one of the things that I told my team, if you look, there's no more successful integrator on the planet than us. What we've achieved in 7 years, what Intellic integration has achieved in 7 years, has never been achieved before in systems integration history. Like I tell you, promise, you will not be able to show an example of another systems integrator who in 7 years has achieved what we've achieved. Now, how did we do that? I mean, do we have all the smartest people? Okay. No, what we did was we created a team of like-minded individuals who are more than the sum of their parts. It's the same thing he did at Tesla. It's the same thing Elon Musk did at Tesla. Okay. What he did was he insists on the free exchange of ideas. And so his move here with Twitter is all about enforcing the free exchange of ideas in the town square. Okay. That's all it is. I got it. We had this whole conversation within our organization about this. Our whole engineers brought it up. And what I said is this is why transparency is so important. So when you're dealing with your clients, why it's important to be transparent with your clients is because the free exchange of ideas, being transparent, is the only way for the best ideas to win. Okay, the best ideas must win, not the ideas from the people in power. The best ideas from all people must win. And the only way to achieve that is through transparency. And then the last thing before we get into the use case here is I bought a Hyundai this past weekend for my son. So I have a son who turned 18 and he's getting ready to graduate from college here next month. So obviously, like any good dad, I'm going to buy him a car. And he, looked at all the cars that he wanted. And, I mean, I was willing to buy him like a Mercedes or a Tesla or whatever, but like a pompous asshole, I was going to do that. But he didn't want that. My son didn't want that. He wanted something way more. He wanted what he wanted. So he starts looking at vehicles, and one of the things that popped up was the Hyundai Santa Cruz, which is Hyundai's first foray into the pickup truck market, and they released it this year, and it's gotten its number one safety rating and all these awesome things. So we go to Hyundai to take a look at this, and I want to talk about how Tesla, in the way that they've approached, going to market, has transformed other car manufacturers. So number one, the last time I bought a brand new car at a car dealer, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but you spend the whole day at the dealer. I mean, so you're going to get there first thing in the morning and you're going to spend 6-7 hours, especially if you're trading a vehicle in or something. You're going to spend the whole day at the dealer. One of the things that stood out to me was there were really three things that stood out. Number one, from the moment we said that we wanted to buy this truck, so he bought a 2022 Hyundai Santa Cruz, black on black pickup truck. You can Google what it is he bought. From the moment we decided we wanted to buy that truck to when we drove off the lot was exactly 1 hour. So from the second we said we'll take it to when he pulled out of the lot was exactly 1 hour. From the time we got to the dealer and left, it was 2 hours. It took us 2 hours to do test drives on two different vehicles. That's never happened for me in my life at a car dealer. And when I asked Hyundai, them, hey man, this experience was totally different. Like, why is this so fast? He said, because we're feeling a significant amount of pressure from the car manufacturers. He didn't say Tesla, but he said from the car manufacturers who don't use the car dealership distribution model. We're feeling a huge amount of pressure because now you can buy a car online and have it delivered to your house as opposed to having to go through this manual process. So we were compelled to speed up that process. He says, Matt Harris says my audio just,
dude, the Hyundai Santa Cruz looks sick, dude. I looked it up. It looks pretty sick.
Number two is the Blue Link. So Hyundai has a fully integrated digital ecosystem with their vehicles called Blue Link. It's very similar to the Tesla app. And before we left the dealer, it was fully integrated. So it was the sales guy is the one who set everything up. It was on Jared's phone. And as he's leaving, he's fully connected to his car. But what blew me away was this. Hyundai literally copied Tesla's app. Okay, so what Tesla had, if those of you who are Tesla owners, if you look at the app, there's nothing you can't do from the Tesla app. I can change the climate. I can use my phone to start my car. That is, I don't need the key. I can just, as long as my phone is in the car, I can just take off and drive. I can look at all the cameras. I can start the car. I can vent the car. I can schedule service. I can do anything. Hyundai has done the exact same thing with BlueLink. Exact same thing. In fact, there are only a couple of features that are in the Tesla app that aren't in the BlueLink app. And when I asked Hyundai this, I said, why? They said, listen, we followed the model of the other manufacturers. Here was the last thing that I thought was amazing. Okay, here was the last thing I thought was amazing. They've changed Hyundai has digitally integrated or has digitally transformed their business so that now the salespeople have a accurate picture of their supply chain. They know they're not just selling vehicles they have on the lot, but they're selling vehicles that are coming to the lot and when they are going to be there, which is fundamentally changed. So now what they have salespeople who are selling vehicles that aren't there but are en route. So what's happening is they're going through that entire process, and then someone's just coming and picking up the car and driving off the lot, which really blew my mind. Okay. And all of that's happened in the last 3 years, in the 3-year window. All right. Any questions pop up here? There was a question from
Mark Jackson asked, how would you define the characteristics and background of the right-minded person for intelligent integration or 4.0 solutions?
This is a good question, Mark, and I'm gonna Taylor Turner, who's one of our members of the mastermind, last week when we were doing the accelerator program, we were doing the accelerator session for leadership. We were talking about building teams. One of the things I really focused on was how do you build your team, your digital transformation team. Now, for a guy like Taylor, that's the team at the integrator. And for somebody else who works for the end user, it might be how do you build the team inside my plant? And so what I did, this is a really good question, Mark. So I'm going to give 3 pieces of advice when you're interviewing people, when you're talking to people, or you're going to be interviewing. Okay. Here are some questions that I ask to try and determine whether someone is right for us. Okay. So it all starts with values and mission. So our values are transparency, authenticity, expertise, humility, and servant leadership. Okay. If I talk about our core values and I tell a person who's interviewing, listen, this is how we operate. Like every time there's a conflict dilemma, we go right back to the values and say, what do our values say we're supposed to do here? Not what do our feelings say we should do, or what does our fear say we should do, but what do our values say we're supposed to do here? If those values don't resonate, we have to, we're not right for each other. Then we talk about mission. Our mission is to help save and create middle-class jobs, okay, in the United States, specifically for us. And that is our overarching mission right now. And I'll show them our strategic vision. I have 3 organizations. I got 4.0 Solutions. I got Intelligent Integration. I have the Bonnie Mae Austin Foundation. And I talk about the mission statements for all 3 of those groups that you're going to hear about all the time when you work here. Does that mission resonate? And if it does, then we have a further conversation. We care a lot less about skill set and a lot more about aptitude and attitude. So how do we determine aptitude and attitude? And it's this. I will ask candidates, I want you to tell me about a time you snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. And then they're going to go, what do you mean? And I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to stare at them. Tell me a time you snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. And however they interpret that, okay, however they interpret that. And, I told this story. Our director of operations is a guy named Matt Olson. We are the first place Matt's ever worked. Okay. Matt has a degree in economics and then he got a degree in mechanical engineering. We're the first engineering firm he's ever worked at. He's been here 4 years and he runs all of operations now. Okay. So in 4 years, and he sits on the board of directors. So in 4 years out of college, he is the director of operations and he sits on board of directors. He's got a 1/4 vote or 1/5 vote on all decisions in the organization. Okay. How did I hire him? Well, I asked him the question, tell me about a time you snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. And he said, he thought about it. And he told a story about how I can't remember if it was his mom was sick or his dad was sick, but one of his parents were sick in Washington. He was like in Utah somewhere, I think. Can't remember. He wasn't in Washington. One of the parents needed to fly out of country. So he needed to go to Washington to help take care of the other parent while they had the flu or something. He had a piece of shit car. He drives halfway. It breaks down on Friday afternoon. And, he cracked a cylinder in the head. Now, he's not a mechanic. He's never worked on cars before. He fucking Googles, what is he supposed to do? He calls a machine shop. He says, hey, do you have a lathe I can borrow? He drives to the machine shop. He grabs a TIG welder and he welds the cylinder. And then he bores out the cylinder, puts the head back on, and finishes the drive to Washington. And I said, I want that guy on my team. I don't care if he knows how to write Python. I don't care if he knows SQL. I don't care any of his skill set. I care that he shares my values. He understands our mission, and he can snatch victory from the jaws of defeat like that. Okay, it helped that he had a degree in economics and a degree in mechanical engineering, so I knew he could jump through those hoops. But to answer your question, a proven track record of being able to solve problems. Here's another way of filtering. Here's another really good way. How do you know you're getting the A player? It's the same thing I said last week. What you do is you ask the person, what do you do? What is your routine when you solve the impossible problem? So what's your routine when you solve the unsolvable? The only person who's going to know what you're asking is the person who solves impossible problems. My routine is I stand up, clap my hands really loud, and I do the moonwalk. Okay. And I will do like breakdance and I do this kind of thing. So when I jump a hoop, when I jump a hurdle that I know no one's ever jumped before, or very few people jump it, I've been grinding on something for 6 hours, 8 hours, 50 hours, and I finally debug it. I finally solve the problem. My routine is the moonwalk. If you ask that question to any A player, they are all going to have a routine. So ask that question. What is it you do when you solve the impossible problem? What do you do? And that's how you filter out, because the person who doesn't solve the impossible problem, they're not even going to know what you're asking them. They're not even going to know how to answer the question. Okay. Great. That was a great question, Mark. Yes, great question. Point, Cheryl. Mark, there's a We're Hiring video in the 4.0 Solutions YouTube channel where I literally did a whiteboard video on what we're looking for. Okay. And how do we decide to bring people on board?
It's a really good video. Yeah. Believe it or not, though, that values thing that you're talking about and the mission, like, why is it that I can't tell you how many times I'm on a call with, someone interested in what we do. And they're like, I watched your video with Walker in New York. And like, that resonated with me, like saving and creating middle-class jobs. Like that happens all the time. Like, they're like, that resonated with me. That's why I wanted to work with you guys. In addition to the other stuff, obviously, that we do well, but like that is a good indicator, is that mission component.
Yeah. And let me say this, we're going to go over here by about 10 minutes, but I think this is important. Because I'm going to talk about something I didn't plan on talking about. Someone had asked me, I made a recommendation that our community join an event, like join an event and watch this event. And I got a bunch of shit for it. I mean, like at least a dozen people after the event messaged me and was like, listen, man, that was nothing but a sales pitch. The whole goal was to just get us to talk to salespeople and shit. And I only watched it because you recommended it. And I I obviously felt really bad about it. And like internally as a team, we were trying to decide like, you know, why was that a problem? And someone within the organization asked me the question, you know, why are they, you know, the people who were putting this event on, how did they get it wrong? And I said, well, the way they measured success is the problem. Okay. When we talk about values and mission, if you guys are part of like IIoT.university, if you're part of mentorship or mastermind, one of the things you will notice is at the end of every single one of our sessions, I will ask everyone on the call, was this valuable? Was this a valuable session? And I want the honest answer. Like the information that we gave to you, that we transmitted to you, is it valuable? Are you able to take what we taught, and you're able to draw a line between what we taught and what you're going to be able to do with it? Okay. And if the answer is no, then we fucking failed. Period. That is our measure of success. Okay. That and the integrators we partner with. If you look at GIS Solutions, Galaris Solutions, or Skellig Automation, or G5 Consulting, or or Michael Dowdell's company, I can never pronounce the company he works for in Mexico. Their measure of success is the same thing. If they're not providing value, it's not successful.
Copar.
Right, Copar. Thank you. Here, there are other people who measure success based on the total number of new people they put in their CRM, the total number of proposals they wrote that week, the average value of the proposal, the total number of projects they won.
How many feet is my boat?
Right. Those are just opportunities. That's not value. That's not a measurement of success. Success is measured by how much value you've created. And as an organization, we are looking for people who have that attitude. That I fail. It doesn't, even if my company made $1 million on this project, if we didn't provide value to the customer, we failed. There are a lot of people out there who the sale, as long as you get the sale, even if the customer is going to be disappointed a year from now, as long as you get the sale, that was a success. And that's what happened with this other thing that I'd recommended. And I'm sorry I recommended it, because, you know, to those of you who were mad at me that I recommended this, that you sit through this session, I apologize. I did not expect it to go the way that it went. Okay.
Well, I asked.
Yeah.
I asked why we recommended it, and, you know, because I'm like, they're not over there recommending maybe us, you know, so.
I recommended it because I believe in the people there. That's why. And I believe that good people who have common values will figure it out. That's what I believe. And I still believe that.
You still believe that?
Yeah, I still believe that. Yep.
Me too, yeah.
All right, let me go to IOSEF, or hi there. I'm working for a startup which is building a data platform for system integrators. What would be the biggest challenge the system integrators face when it comes to processing data? Thanks. Normalizing it. So there's no point in, you can't if you don't normalize data, that is, you organize it semantically and you normalize it so that, say, a value that changes once every 5 minutes is lined up with a value that changes 60 times per second. If it's not normalized, you can't process it. Okay. Getting it normalized is the biggest challenge that people face. It's not connecting to it or collecting it. That's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is semantic hierarchy and normalization.
Is that why we like HighByte?
It's why we love HighByte. We love data operations tools. That's why we love HighByte. It's why we love Ignition as a tool, Factory Studio, because one of the things they all have in common is that you can model the data so that it's normalized.
Michael Rada,
spot on, brother. All right, let me answer. I'm going to answer a couple of questions and do the use case. So there was a couple of questions that came out from last week's session, and I want to make sure I answer them. So Vipul said, wonderful insights, Walker, as always, but just for a broader perspective from consulting point of view, can you illustrate some digital strategy examples instead of the use cases, which normally no one is sure about at the initial stages? Like, if we talk about pharmaceutical, for instance, that industry is still stuck into the old age documentation mess and hesitating to move ahead into digital transformation. What would your specific queries be for that? This is a great question, because pharma is an industry we've worked with quite a bit over the last few years. And, you know, worked with companies who have the Pfizer vaccine, and we're part of the digital initiatives for all that kind of stuff. And we're working with a big pharma company in the Northeast right now. And, let me say this. In all digital strategies, you need to focus on the problem. Okay. So in pharmaceutical, what is the key problem in pharma? Okay. As it relates to why is it we don't digitally transform? Go ahead, Zach.
Bureaucracy.
What is the key problem?
Politics.
Right. Internal politics. Yep. So how do you overcome internal politics? Through results. Right. So how are we going to provide results? So for those of you who do digital transformation for pharma, this should be no surprise. Their number one problem is for every digital change in the operational network you make, you have to revalidate. Okay. Validation and documentation is a huge piece of the pharmaceutical industry. And no one adds a new connection on the operational side of the business in pharma because it has to be revalidated. What does that mean? If I add a sensor and I'm going to collect that sensor in an OPC server, and then from OPC to the supervisor control and data acquisition, I'm going to consume that data. And from supervisor control and data acquisition, I'm going to put it in a database. And from the database, I'm going to consume into the MES and put it as part of the batch record. It has to be validated at each step and documented. So that is, you have to confirm that the value changes, that each hop has been validated. Now, obviously, that becomes a fucking nightmare at scale, right? So number one, in pharma, validation is a huge issue. And number two, a lack of innovation. So how do we approach the pharma problem? Okay, great question. The architecture that we use jumps the validation hurdle because it only has to be validated to the unified namespace. You don't have to validate it. You don't have to validate it to each node. You only got to validate it one time into the UNS, and then as many consumers as you want can consume it because that data point was validated. That transition was validated. Okay. So instead of having 5 steps of validation, I've got 1. Okay. That's problem number 1. Number 2, you're free to innovate after that. Okay. The last thing with pharma is batch record. Everything is centered around the batch record in pharmaceutical. What you want to do is make the compilation, the storage, and the consumption of the batch record for each batch in a bioreactor as easy as humanly possible. Okay. This conversation came from digital strategy, from the video where we were talking about digital strategy. Okay. Matthew Law asked the question, it seems almost all organizations at this stage would benefit from the same first sentence, have a single source of truth for all information in the organization. This problem comes up so often. To what extent do you think there's a benefit to an organization deviating from this? Great video. Thank you. So let me just go ahead and tell you what most organizations' digital strategy should start with. So what is the digital strategy? It's the overarching vision of the organization for becoming a digital company, a smart company where data is our primary commodity. Okay. It should be a 3-sentence statement. The first sentence should be the 10,000-foot view. The second sentence should talk a little bit about the technology. The third sentence should be the differentiator. So I'm going to give you guys the first 2 sentences of basically every digital strategy. Okay. Or what it should be, something to this effect. So a good digital strategy statement is this: we use accurate, unified digital data and information to drive decision-making quickly and in real time. We leverage an infrastructure that treats all producers and consumers of data and information as nodes in an ecosystem that interact with one another through a unified namespace. The third sentence is how becoming a digital company differentiates you. It's your intellectual property. Okay. Most of the time, what I do is I will give the C-suite, the executive leadership, this sentence to start with. And it is this one: we use accurate, unified digital data and information to drive decision-making quickly and in real time. The second sentence needs to come from your director of digital transformation and your architect. And the third sentence needs to come from this boardroom. Okay. So anyway, that was a really good question. from Matthew. All right. Any other questions pop through here?
Still got to get to the
before I get to the use case.
Yeah.
We need data about our machines on our customers' floor, IOSF. I think many misunderstood the value and think only money is equal to value. Good job. Awesome approach for validation. Thanks, Brian. But why is it hard to have them on the customer's floor? Why is it hard to get the data on the plant floor? IOSF is so because he asked that question. I know that IOSF is not a integrator. Because there is the answer to your question is you should watch the IOSF. You should watch one of the very first videos we ever did, whiteboard videos. I think I'm wearing a brown turtleneck, and it's what is IIoT, I think is the video, where I explain how data really only goes in one direction. And that's the problem with the prevailing thought in Industry 4.0. It goes up the stack. It's never meant to come back down. So as you add context going up the stack, most organizations don't have a mechanism to take that context and get it back to the plant floor. This would be things like area level OEE or plant level OEE. Most of the times a machine is not going to know how it is performing relative to the rest of the other machines, assets in the same area. That number could be quite valuable to someone who's writing process control for that piece of equipment if they were visionary in their thinking. Okay. All right, let's do a use case. It's going to take me about 10 minutes to get through it. Maybe 15. All right,
so this is the Tesla use case?
This is not the Tesla use case. So this was in 2016. This was a in September of 2015. A vendor reached out to us and said, "Hey, we have this client who's been using this IIoT platform. Okay, it's been using this IIoT platform. It's our platform. They've spent millions of dollars, and it's not going well. But what it really boiled down to is the time to value takes too long. You know, that is each use case that they're doing. It's taking too long. There are too many gaps in the data. So there's too much data around the organization that they want to acquire that they can't. And there's no mechanism to take what we've learned in this location, this site, in this area, and have it apply to process improvement of the same area, but in a different site. Okay. So this engagement started with me and another architect who I'm really good friends with. We flew out to their location and we met with their board of directors and their newly hired director of digital transformation. The newly hired director of digital transformation, that wasn't his title, but that's what he actually was. He wanted to stay the course, but improve the architecture and the methodology used to develop their solutions. So this is a large organization, I think about 10,000 to 15,000 employees. There were 4 specific sites we were working in 3 countries. Okay. So 3 countries, 5 sites actually. About 1,000 users were going to be using this digital solution, and it was going to apply to about 500 assets, about 100 assets per site, give or take. Okay. They had already spent millions of dollars. They had only integrated the solution to one area in one site, and they had spent years, 3 years or something. Their first mistake was when they were ready, they wanted to focus on MES initially. What they wanted to do was they wanted to know where they were to plan. They wanted to know how efficient their operations were, and they wanted to get much better at recipe management in all of their recipes. One of the unique challenges this organization had was that they made lots of custom products. So they had something like 30,000 SKUs in the ERP, and they would make 100 new SKUs every day. So a unique thing was we would have to be able to consume a new SKU. We'd have to check for new SKUs at some set interval in this MES layer, and we would have to download the bill of materials and do all of our material definition and management. But because they created so many new products, that was a unique thing about their solution. The other thing is they had very differing processes. So they made, I can't reveal the the industry. So it was additive manufacturing. So that is, as you went from one area to the next, you were taking the thing from one area and adding to it before you got to the finished good. So when we met with the C-suite, we asked them what they wanted, and they basically said, we want manufacturing execution system with the core four, right? So OEE, downtime tracking, work order management, scheduling. They wanted material management. They wanted quality management. They wanted recipe management and validation. They wanted statistical process control. They wanted historical analysis. And they wanted a single source of truth. They didn't say unified namespace, but they said they wanted a single source of truth for all data in their organization. It needed to be integrated to the ERP system, and it needed to be integrated to their lab. So the labs in their sites could no longer be separate from operations. Okay. One of the questions I asked the executive leadership was, based on your satisfaction level with the current solution that the other integrator has built, how likely is it that you want to just kill this project and start over from scratch? And they all said 80%. So they were 80% of the way there to just scrapping it. And that was every executive, 5 of them. So me and the other architects said, listen, this is what we'd like to do. If you're willing to allocate $50,000 to a proof of concept in this location here in the United States, there were 2 locations in the States that we were working with. If you're willing to allocate $50,000 to a proof of concept, okay, then what we're going to ask you to do is we want a process that you've tried to integrate that failed. Okay, and it was an extrusion molding machine that had a custom embedded controller. You need to give us 12 weeks. Let us integrate this extrusion molding area. And so they said, okay. We said, we'll do it our way. One of the unique things about the extrusion molding line was they used an inline tester, a vision system, that tested the molded parts that came out. But that tester could be moved from molder to molder. So if you've ever done MES systems, it's a nightmare when end-of-line testing is mobile, right? So that's a unique thing where a cell within the production line could be moved between many production lines. Okay, it's a hard hurdle to jump. The other big hurdle we were going to have to jump is this: they're making 100 new parts every day. They're defining 100 new products, new SKUs every single day. So we did that proof of concept for 12 weeks. They spent about $50,000, and we blew them away. One of the big hurdles that we had to do was, how do we handle the mobile inline tester? We decided not to do it through Mac ID. Basically, we looked at the routing table. We could tell which switch it was plugged into, and then we figured out which production line that cell was on based on which switch it was plugged into. Okay. Another way to do that would have been to look at the Mac ID. Which Mac ID is in which routing table on which switch. We could have done that as well. But what we did was we looked at the IP address, which was static on that machine. After that, they decided, hey, so we did that from September of 15 to December of 2015. And then we drew up a big engagement, in which was, they were basically going to buy 200 hours of engineering every month, for a year. So we spent 13 months. We did 14 iterations. We did 4,200 man hours. So basically two man years. They spent $500,000. We integrated in 3 different countries. Okay. And 5 locations, 500 total assets for 1,000 users. Okay. So also a really important point is when we got about 6 months in, so from February 2016 to September of 2016, we were doing the core capabilities, MES with Core 4, material management, quality management, recipe management, SPC, historical analysis, UNS, ERP integration, and lab integration. We were building all those feature sets. In September is when we started to scale. We went to our second location. We went to our third location. We also needed to find an integrator who was close to their corporate headquarters, who would be able to support them boots on the ground. An integrator who was within an hour's drive of their corporate headquarters. Because obviously we were in Dallas we were, the fastest we could get there would be like, say, 8 to 10 hours if we managed a flight or whatever. So we needed an integrator who could be boots on the ground. We found an integrator, and I found a guy there. I interviewed him. I interviewed the owner of the company and said, hey, listen, I'd like to train you guys to be able to support this client. We want to be able to hand this client off to you in April of next year. Our plan is to only support them for 1 year, and then we'll just be the architect. So starting in September of 2016, about 6 months before we were ready to do the handoff, we started training this other integrator. That included having that integrator subcontract under us while we did another client's integration so that they could learn our methodology. It was all sort of the baseline for where mastermind and mentorship came from. How do we're teaching them how we do these integrations. And then from February of 16 to February 2017, we just basically iterated. Okay. And so there were 14 iterations. That's 14 phases of deploying this globally. Okay. And then we handed off to the other integrator in April of 2017, 1 year after or about 14 months after we engaged with the client. And then in April of 2018, we did a case study. Okay. If you look at the things that we did from October of 2015 to December of 2015, we did engagement and we did the molding proof of concept. That's where we designed the architecture, helped them with their digital strategy, and we saved the project. Okay. From February of 2016 to September of 2016, we codified the strategy. We finalized the architecture. We did the Site 1 use cases. We did Site 1 integration. So that was 3 areas in Site 1, which is their corporate headquarters. We did Site 2, 3, and 4 data collection. So we connected all the equipment in Sites 2, 3, and 4 and started and built out the unified namespace of those sites. We did capabilities design, specifically SPC. We had to jump that hurdle. We had to jump the hurdle of consuming new SKUs from the ERP system. And then we did our SPC testing and ERP integration from February 16 to September 2016. The second big phase was doing Site 3 PLC upgrades, Site 2 Area 1 integration, and MES integration from about August of 2016 to November of 2016. And that was in China. Then from September of 2016 to December of 2016, we were doing Site 2, Area 2, and Site 4 integration and partner training. Site 2 was located in Central America. And then from December of 2016 to April of 2017, we did continuous integration, continuous development. We supported them. We did the training of the integrator, and then we did the handoff in April of 2017. Now, let me say this. A year later, there was a big case study done, and documentary film done on the whole deal and everything. I want to go back and read the actual metrics here again and kind of point out why is it we never lose to another integrator. There are big integrators out there who bid projects against us and never win. And the reason why is there are very few integrators, if you're using the Industry 3.0 model, that you can do this for the price that we were able to do it for. So we did 13 months of work, 2 man years, 14 iterations, 4,200 man hours. They spent $500,000, $500,000 for work in 3 countries, in 5 locations, 5 different plants, 500 total assets, 1,000 users. They spent $500,000. And prior to that, they'd spent almost $3 million. Okay. To this day, they've just continued to iterate and scale. Okay. Continue to iterate and scale. All right. Any further questions before we call it a day on that use case? Mark, let's start with Mark Ledbetter. In the IoT University videos, you made a quick comment saying something about having network security rules between ERP and the edge was legacy thinking. Can you expand on that? Yeah. Mark, if what you're doing is using the edge to call directly to the ERP, which is why you would need security rules in place, or the other way around, you want ERP to consume data from the edge, then that's legacy thinking. what you can do is use an architecture where you don't violate Sarbanes-Oxley. Okay, so one of the things, for those you don't know, like in publicly traded companies, most of the information that needs to be protected as a function of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act lives inside the ERP system. So organizations can't just give unfettered access to the ERP because it violates federal law. Okay, there's data in there that you can't expose to people who don't fall under the purview of the SEC. Okay, so you have to protect that data. Well, there's a way to protect that data and make it accessible, make the data that's in the ERP that's accessible to consumers without putting message queues and all this kind of shit in between, right? Middleware. And that is using a broker technology for that ERP system to communicate with the edge device. It's the same thing with the edge device. One of the biggest risks with edge devices is if I want to poll a PLC for its data, and I want to save money, I want to put my OPC server in a data center somewhere, then it means that I have to open a port so that that OPC server can talk to that PLC. But if you use the right technology, and part of the reason we use MQTT is because in MQTT, the client instantiates the connection to the broker. The broker doesn't instantiate the connection to the client. So you don't need to open any inbound ports using an MQTT broker. Okay? Because the client that's on the plant floor only needs to be able to access out to the broker. The connection is instantiated, and then they communicate through that certified connection, right? Part of the reason we use MQTT or use broker technology is to jump the compliance hurdle with ERP and the security hurdle with edge devices. Great question, though. Sanjiv, if an organization is already centralizing factory floor data across sites in a historian, does it still make sense to propagate data directly from sites into a unified namespace? Yes. You can't. So remember, unified namespace is there's a whole host of reasons that you use a UNS, not the least of which is your data is not deterministic. Okay. What an organization wants is a function of what an organization knows. And digital transformation is about exponentially increasing the collective knowledge of an organization. As the organization learns more, they want more. You have to be able to develop solutions quickly. Okay. If what I'm going to do is just dump data in a historian and then retrieve it use case by use case, okay, that is, I'm going to make a direct connection for, so I'm going to go data store, API, UI on every single use case. You're never, ever going to catch up. What you have to be able to do is create an architecture or an infrastructure where I can stack data in the same infrastructure, and anything that was already subscribing to the parent node now gets that data. I don't have to do any additional mapping. I don't have to do anything. The subscription's already set up. So, and what I mean is this: if I've got a topic namespace that is Intellic, Dallas, Walker's office, okay, and inside of Walker's office namespace, there's only 3 measurements, okay. That those measurements are: is the computer on? What's the temperature? What's the relative humidity? If I set up a subscription to say I want to subscribe to the data that's in Walker's office, I'm going to get those 3 things. And if another client publishes other telemetry data into Walker's office, the next time that data changes, you're going to get that data too, with no integration. It just gets retrieved. Okay? Think about it. Scalability comes from from creating self-aware systems.
It's right? Like if the simulation was written in a software program, it would use a broker technology for the simulation.
Exactly. And by the way, the best illustration of this is in mentorship. I think last month or 2 months ago, we did the self-aware plating line. So I showed, a rudimentary self-aware application, a self-aware demo, where if I add a new sensor, using this technology, the object for that sensor can just show up on the screen without me doing anything, right? Matt Paris is a big fan of self-aware. I know that he's probably done a bunch of use cases on his own on self-aware systems, but in mentorship, we do go over this explicitly. So Great question, though.
So what's your favorite feature on the Tesla?
Favorite feature on the Tesla. I mean, other than raw speed, I mean, which by the way, I raced a CBR 750 just a couple days ago on the expressway. Yeah, at 75 miles an hour, we did a 3, 3, 2, 1 countdown and then smashed it. And I just blew him away. He never even got ahead of me at all. I mean, that's how crazy fast the Model S is. A motorcycle can't beat it. Now, like a 900 or 1100 is going to, with the right torque is going to blow you away. But like a high, there's a couple of them out there that will beat the Model S. But in terms of raw speed, that's probably my favorite thing. But for me, it's like right now I have a software update to download tonight, and I already read the release notes on it, and there's like 4 new features in this new release. So, I mean, for me, it's the ecosystem piece, the fact that the car is always changing.
Yeah.
Let me make Mark Ritchie asked, could you do a quick recap of the differences between a data model, information model, and an object model? Yes, Cheryl, you're right. That is a whole other video and a whole can of worms. Mark, real quick, Joe, understand that data model, information model, and object model are similar to one another, but not the same. And I will do I'll shoot a completely separate video on that topic. I actually think I already have, but all right, awesome. Sorry we went over 15 minutes, folks. Hopefully it was valuable.
Thanks, guys.
Remember, for those of you who are in the accelerator program, tomorrow is Introduction to Digital Supply Chain. Very valuable session that Zach is leading. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys next week.
Peace.